Welcome back to Grief Inspired. My name is Catherine McNulty, and if you have lost someone that you love and you're not sure where to go or how to grieve, or you can't find the resources that you've been looking for, then I'm really glad that you're here because I think this video is going to help you. I know when I lost my son, I had no idea where to go or what to do. And so now we have the ability to come to YouTube and to ask the question, how do I heal my grief? What do I do in the earliest stages of grief? How do I grieve effectively? Whatever it is that you're typing into the chat, this is a video that's going to help you about avoidance today, because one of the keys to healing from grief is not to avoid. And we're going to talk about why that is. The other thing is to lean in to your grief. We're going to talk about that. And then we're going to talk about how not to do it alone, because I think that's so important. So let's talk about avoidance and what you need to know about avoidance. First thing is that avoidance of grief, avoidance of the pain that you feel, is an absolutely 100% natural response. We want to run the other direction from the things that bring us pain. It's normal. It's natural. We're wired to do that. But when it comes to grief, it's actually the opposite of avoidance is what helps us heal. It's that leaning in to grief. It's the exploring the emotions. It's actually feeling the pain of your grief that is actually going to help you heal. The other thing that you need to know about avoidance is that it's not going to serve you. Things will not get better. And I think that's a common misconception in grief, is that if we just, time heals all wounds. I'm sure you've heard that. And that if you just wait, your grief will subside. Maybe. But why wait and have it be long and drawn out and painful when there are things that you can do? You don't have to be a victim to your grief. So things like not processing your grief, not learning about your grief, not understanding your emotions, right? These are things that slow down the grief process and actually make it longer, more drawn out, and in the end, more painful. And so when it comes to avoidance of grief, the way to deal with it is to start to lean in. Lean in to learn about what's happening. So often we want to suppress our emotions. We want to not get angry because we don't want to be seen as an angry person, or maybe we don't think anger is acceptable because we don't know what to do with our anger. I've had some clients say, like, I don't want to start crying because I feel like I will never stop. You will stop eventually, but it needs to come out. So avoiding your grief doesn't serve you. So if you're not dealing with the emotions that you're feeling, if you're not going through the process of healing and learning about your grief, and if you're not sharing your loss story with other people, your grief needs a place to go. You need to be able to let your grief out. You need to have someone to witness your grief, to share your grief with you. It's very powerful to hear other people share their stories as grief as well. If you suppress your emotions, if you push them down, what happens is they begin to fester. They begin to fester and they begin to grow and they begin to get worse. And I don't want that for you, because bad things happen when we suppress our emotions. They show up in ways that don't serve us. They show up in addiction. They show up in depression. They show up in anxiety. They show up in other bad ways. And so silencing yourself, silencing your emotions, silencing your grief by suppressing it, by pushing it down, by avoiding it, does not serve you. What do you do? How do you heal? You need to share your grief. You need to hear other people share their stories of grief. You need to be able to talk about it, and you need to be able to talk about it with someone that understands. So often people will think that their family is the ones to help them. If your family has not been through loss, if your family has not experienced trauma from loss, if your family doesn't understand the panic attacks, the emotional triggers, the depth of depression that you are surprised is actually happening to you, then they're not the ones to help you. Grief is big. Sure, they can be there for you. They can be supportive, but there are times when you need to lean into your grief and you need to find somebody who can really help you not avoid it and get through it. All of these things, you need to find a safe place where you can not avoid your grief, where you can share some of your grief, share what's going on, ask questions, learn what's normal, learn what's different. When do you need to be worried? When is, hey, well, this is the part of the grief process. Sometimes that can be hard to know. So the overwhelming message here is do not avoid your grief. If you do not know what to do, the things to do are look and see what resources you have around you. What community resources do you have by way of grief groups? What grief courses do you have? I have a grief course. You can work one-on-one with me. Do you have insurance that affords you a reduced cost to work with a therapist? You have to find what you have available, and then you need to try them. And sometimes it takes more than one attempt. I have people say, well, I tried this one thing and it just didn't work, and so I'm just done. That doesn't work either. It's about being brave enough to ask for help when grief is big, because it is. So many of us dismiss and minimize how important the grief work is, and how grief affects so much of our life. So find a place to go, find someone to talk to. If you want to jump in my next grief course, I'm starting to enroll in that. We're going to start at the beginning of the year. I'm taking a group that I'm with right now, and we're going to get through the holidays. We're going to do that together. And then we're going to start up again in a new group. And if you need somebody to talk to, then I want to encourage you to be part of that group. So avoidance of grief is what you don't want to do. You do want to lean in. You do want to share. And you do want to find people who understand what you're going through so that you can heal effectively. I do fundamentally believe that you can heal grief. I believe that healing from grief means making it a little bit less painful. It means giving your grief a place to exist in your life so that it's not so overwhelming, so that it doesn't take over everything. Will it still be there? Yes. I don't think grief ever goes away completely, but that doesn't mean that you can't heal your grief. And I think healing from grief for me is getting to a place where I can talk about my son Jackson. I can share everything about my experience with him, where I've processed all of the things that happened that were traumatic and scary. And I've addressed my anxiety around his loss as it relates to my son Mason, who is now here. And I'm used to be very, very fearful for his safety because of my previous experience. I think healing is about being able to talk about your loss without falling apart, being able to share your loss, being able to lean in to all of the good things that your loved one brought to your life, to be able to share what you've learned as you've grieved. And I think we're constantly learning. We're constantly learning and growing through our grief. And I think that that's a good thing because it makes us better humans. It makes us more empathetic. It makes us more compassionate to other people and to ourselves, because it starts with ourselves. If we can forgive ourselves, if we can love ourselves, if we can find grace to move through our day and not say, look, yeah, you didn't do it perfectly. Okay. Because none of us are perfect. And so many of us are grieving. And the way for us all to heal is to do it collectively, to do it together, to do it in a way that connects us, in a way that unites us, not a way that divides us. And it is that avoidance that creates the division. It creates the isolation and the loneliness for you. And I don't want that. I want you to heal effectively. I want you to learn how to grieve. I want you to learn that your grief can inspire you to become more, to do more, to reach out to others, to serve, whatever that is for you, whatever your grief can inspire you to do. That's what I want. So I hope this helps. Reach out to me anytime at GriefInspired@gmail.com. I want to hear from you. Please leave me your comments. As always, I answer each and every one of them. And I can't wait to hear how you're doing. So let me know if you need support, and we'll find a way to get you some. Bye for now.